The next three sections are going to be dedicated to talking about each of the three major types of fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas. We'll talk about what they are, how they are obtained, and some of the environmental and health consequences of their use, starting with coal. Coal is a combustible black or brownish black sedimentary rock containing a high amount of hydrocarbons. There are four varieties of coal that are ranked based on their quality, which are starting at the lowest quality, lignite, bituminous, and anthracite. As this illustration shows, the highest quality coal is that which has been in the ground the longest and has experienced the most heat and pressure, whereas the lowest quality is the youngest that was formed under the least pressure. And note that anthracite is not shown in this picture. It only goes to bituminous. The consequences of the higher temperature and pressure conditions means that the percent hydrocarbon content increases and therefore the amount of stored energy increases. And also moisture content decreases, which makes it more easily combustible. And that's what makes it higher quality. Coal is obtained via one of two methods for mining. The first one is strip mining, also called surface mining. Strip mining is used for coal that is on the surface layers of the Earth's crust, usually less than 200 feet underground, and it involves using large machines to remove what is referred to as the overburden, which is the soil and rock layers above the coal. And this strips away large sections of the Earth, as you can see in this aerial photo of the Kayenta coal mine, which was a strip mine that operated from 1973 to 2019 on Navajo Nation. And it was shut down around the same time that the Navajo Generating Station coal-fired power plant was shut down. One strategy used in the surface mining of surface locations is mountaintop removal, which is where the top portion of a mountain is blasted away with explosives to allow access to the coal deposits. The other type of mining is underground mining, which sometimes is called deep mining. This approach is used for deeper coal deposits that are over 200 feet underground. And to these deposits, mine shafts with elevators are constructed, which can extend thousands of feet deep and for many lateral miles under the surface of the Earth. It has to be processed to prepare it for combustion in a coal fired power plant. So the coal will be cleaned to remove its heating value, which is a measurement of how much energy can be obtained from it. And this cleaning involves removing impurities like dirt, ash, and sulfur. Then the coal is transported to the power plant. 70% of the coal in the US travels by train for at least part of its journey, but it may also travel by ship or truck, or it can be crushed and mixed with water to form a slurry that is sent through a pipeline. Once at the power plant, the coal will be pulverized into a fine powder in order to maximize the amount of combustion you get out of it. The powder gets mixed with hot air and blown into a furnace, where it is burned, and the heat energy emitted from the burning boils a stream of purified water that is piped through the furnace. The steam that is produced from the boiling of this water then turns the blade of a turbine that is connected to a generator, which produces electricity and sends it off onto the electrical grid. The steam that was produced from the boiling of the water then passes through to an underground condenser, where millions of gallons of cool water, usually from a surface water source like a river, will be used to cool off the steam until it condenses back down into liquid water, from which point it will be recycled back into the boiler to be turned into steam again. And meanwhile, the surface water that was used to cool it is returned back to its source. So, this gives you a sense of what coal goes through from beginning to end over the course of it being utilized for energy. And these various steps of the process have consequences for the environment and for human health. When it comes to the mining of coal, strip mining destroys ecosystems and threatens biodiversity by carving away the top layer of the earth and the organisms that reside there. This impact is significant, especially because 66% of the coal mining in the US is strip mining, which is an artifact of the reality that strip mining is simpler and less expensive than deep mining. In addition, the mountaintop removal technique results in dirt, sediment, and pollutants being deposited and waterways, which harms aquatic ecosystems. The photo on this slide is of the strip mines in the Miami Globe district of Arizona, and it was taken in 2007. And these are actually copper mines, not coal mines, but the principles are still the same. You can see areas where mountaintop removal has taken place and the topography of the land has been altered. And obviously, the ecosystems have been severely affected, with large parts of the natural landscape being destroyed. In the US, there are laws that require that dust and runoff from coal mining operations be controlled and that the area be restored after the completion of the mining activities. But under these laws, the restoration is mostly about stabilizing the rock formations to prevent landslides and erosions, rather than reestablishing the ecosystems. And indeed, it is very challenging, perhaps impossible, to reestablish the same ecosystem in a place that has been strip mined, even when an effort is made. The quality of the soil is so poor that the standard for restoring forested area in the US isn't actually to get them back to a forested state, but to just try to get them to become a grassland, which is a different ecosystem entirely. Underground mining has its consequences as well. One of these is that methane has to be vented from the underground pockets that are excavated for coal mining in order to make it safe. And methane is a potent greenhouse gas. It has a global warming potential that is 27 to 30 times more powerful than CO2 when considered on a 100-year timescale. So even before the coal has been mined and burned, the process is already a polluting one. Underground mining can also lead to ground collapse and sinkholes above mine tunnels, which alters topography and threatens ecosystems. This photo is of a sinkhole created by the Uralkali potassium mine in Berezhniki, Russia. Another consequence is the runoff of acidic mine drainage into waterways, which contaminates and damages ecosystems. And this consequence is not exclusive to underground mining, it also applies to strip mining. The photo here is part of the Rio Tinto in Spain, which is contaminated with acid mine drainage. And then when it comes to the environmental impacts of the actual burning of the coal combustion emits sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, which causes acid rain. And of course, as we've learned, carbon dioxide is produced from the combustion of fossil fuels, including coal. So that covers the environmental impacts, but we also need to mention the human health impacts. You may have heard of a condition called black lung at some point. The medical term for this is pneumoconiosis, and it's a condition where lung tissue is damaged from the buildup of inhaled coal residue. It's a condition seen in people who work in coal mines for prolonged periods of time. In addition, the burning of coal emits airborne pollutants that affect even people who aren't directly exposed to the coal. It emits ash residue, which contributes to particulate matter in the air, and if it's not scrubbed out of the coal smoke before it is released. In the US, this ash is scrubbed and then stored at the power plant or placed in a landfill, but there can be problems with the stored ash leaching pollution into groundwater. Coal combustion also produces, as we noted in our previous slide, sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxides, which can contribute to a variety of cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. Coal emissions are also a significant source of toxic heavy metals, which are implicated in neurological and developmental conditions. And coal is the single largest source of mercury emissions into the environment. You may know that mercury is also a toxic metal, and actually, mercury is in the air. In the air isn't a problem, but when the airborne mercury emissions settle in water, they are transformed into methyl mercury, which is highly toxic and also bioaccumulative. Animals, including humans, do not have a way to excrete methylmercury from their bodies. And so over their lifetime, it accumulates to higher and higher levels, which also means that it biomagnifies through aquatic food chains. Organisms at the lower levels of the food chain get low levels of exposure, but as they are eaten in large quantities by organisms above them in the food chain, the mercury levels accumulate in those higher level consumers to the point where they can be dangerous for us to eat. Mercury consumption is most dangerous for children and pregnant women. And this table from the EPA gives you a sense of which fish are lower on the food chain and therefore lower in mercury and are considered generally safe to eat, like anchovies, herrings, scallops, shrimps, clams, cod, crab, as opposed to those that are higher up in the food chain, like sharks, swordfish, king mackerel, which have some of the highest mercury levels. And while it can be difficult to quantify the impact of coal combustion on human health, there is one report I can share with you on a coal fired power plant that is close to home. The Navajo Generating Station, which was a power plant that operated on Navajo Nation for many years and was supplied by the Kayenta mine that you saw an aerial photo a few slides back. The plant was decommissioned in 2019, and on the right you can see a shot of the demolition of the smokestacks in 2020. But back when it was still operating in the mid 2010s, it was burning 8 million tons of coal every year, which released 34,000 tons of nitrogen oxides, 50 million tons of carbon dioxide, and 500 pounds of mercury annually. And a nonprofit group called the Clean Air Task Force estimated that these emissions were likely to result in more than 128 million in healthcare related costs to heart problems, asthma, and other conditions brought on by the pollution emitted from the power plant. In recent years, there have been more efforts to make coal fired power plants cleaner and less polluting. These include what is branded as clean coal technology, which removes the chemical components of coal that led to sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxygen emissions before the coal is burned. Scrubbers are also standard in the US. These are mechanisms with the power plant that remove pollutants from the smoke before it is released. Carbon capture and sequestration is a technology that is being investigated, which would involve separating out, capturing carbon dioxide emissions from the smoke and then storing them permanently so they can't contribute to warming. And then when it comes to mining operations, there are still efforts to rehabilitate land that is affected by coal mining for other purposes, including landfills, airports, and golf courses. And that is the end of this soft chalk chapter. We'll see you for page 3.